The first thing I remember is the ceiling. It wasn't dramatic. Just long white panels sliding past me as I was rushed down a hospital hallway in Columbus, Ohio. The lights buzzed softly overhead, almost calmly, like they didn't realize my body felt like it was tearing itself apart from the inside. My lower back burned. My side throbbed in deep, grinding waves that stole the air right out of my lungs. Every time I tried to breathe through it, nausea surged up instead, sharp and relentless. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying I wouldn't throw up on myself before we stopped moving. And before I go any further, let me pause right here for just a second. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. The gurney jolted slightly as we turned a corner. A nurse's voice floated above me, calm and practiced. Somewhere close to my face, a doctor leaned in. He spoke gently, but there was no mistaking the seriousness underneath. He told me a kidney stone was blocking my ureter. He told me an infection had already started spreading. He told me this wasn't routine. And he told me I needed an emergency urology procedure immediately. I nodded because nodding hurt less than talking. I trusted him. I always trusted doctors.
I was a nurse myself.
I knew the difference between discomfort and danger. And this was bad. They wheeled me behind a thin hospital curtain into a holding area. The motion stopped, but the pain didn't. It just settled deeper, like it had found a permanent place inside me. That's when I heard them. My mom first. Her voice was tight, clipped at the edges, the way it got when she was scared but trying not to show it. She asked questions quickly, one after another. My dad stood quieter. He cleared his throat a few times. I knew that sound. It meant he didn't know what to say, and hoped someone else would say it for him. And then there was my sister. Her name is Serena. She's older than me. Always confident. Always certain. Her voice cut clean through the others, sharp and impatient, like this whole situation was an interruption she hadn't planned for. She said we should all go home. She said I would be fine. She reminded them I was a nurse, that I knew how these things worked, that doctors tended to overreact. She laughed a little, not cruelly, just dismissively, and started talking about her wedding. Her dress fitting that afternoon. A cake tasting she had already paid for. How everything was scheduled and couldn't be moved around me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my hands clenched into fists, listening to my life be reduced to a calendar conflict. I waited. I waited for my mom to push back. I waited for her to say, no, this is serious, we're staying. I waited for my dad to speak up, to say his younger daughter needed him. Instead, there was a pause. A long one. The kind that stretches until you already know what's coming. Then my mom sighed. She said Serena was probably right. She said I was strong. She said I would understand. My dad didn't say anything at all. A nurse pulled the curtain back slightly and asked, gently, who would be staying to sign the paperwork and wait while I was taken in. No one answered. The silence felt heavier than the pain. I could feel it pressing into my chest. Then I heard footsteps. One set, then another. Moving away. They left. All of them. They chose to go home and continue planning a wedding while I was prepped for emergency surgery. I didn't cry.
Not then.
The shock came quietly, like something clicking into place. A cold understanding settling deep inside my bones. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't bad timing. This was a decision. Serena had decided I was optional. And everyone else had agreed. If you're listening right now, pause for a moment. Where are you? In your car? On your couch? Folding laundry? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Because while you're listening from somewhere safe, I was lying flat on my back under harsh hospital lights, realizing my family had just walked away from me. The nurses moved fast after that. They asked me to confirm my name, my date of birth, my allergies. Their voices were calm, steady, professional. I answered automatically, like muscle memory had taken over. Inside, something was breaking. I had spent my whole life being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need much. I was 33 years old, a travel nurse, used to being alone. I told myself I liked it that way. As they rolled me toward the procedure room, a wave of fear hit me that had nothing to do with surgery. It was the fear of waking up alone. I had seen that look on patients' faces so many times before. That quiet panic when they realize no one is coming for them. I always told myself that would never be me. I had a family. I had a sister. I was wrong. The anesthesiologist leaned over me and asked if I had any last questions. For a split second, I almost asked him to wait. Just a minute. In case my family came back. They didn't.
So I said no.
I said I was ready. And as the medication began to pull me under, the last thing I remember thinking was how strange it felt to be called strong while being left completely alone. But what happened after I woke up and what I found waiting for me on my phone is when I realized this wasn't the first time my pain had been invisible. When I opened my eyes again, the room was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Hospital quiet. The kind where every sound feels louder because there's nothing familiar to soften it. A monitor beeped steadily beside me.
My mouth was dry.
My body felt heavy, like gravity had doubled while I was asleep. A dull ache pulsed through my side, deep and sore, the kind that reminded you something serious had just happened. I turned my head instinctively. I expected to see someone in the chair by the bed. My mom with her purse tucked under her arm. My dad standing awkwardly, pretending not to worry. Even Serena, scrolling on her phone, impatient but present. The chair was empty. I stared at it longer than I should have, my brain slow, lagging behind reality. The space beside my bed felt bigger than it was supposed to be, like it was swallowing sound. A nurse noticed my eyes open and walked over with a gentle smile. She told me the procedure had gone well. A stent had been placed to relieve the blockage. Antibiotics were already working to fight the infection. I nodded, trying to follow her words, trying to anchor myself in something solid. Then she glanced around the room. "Did your family step out?" she asked softly. The question landed heavier than any diagnosis. I swallowed. They had important things to do. The words came out easily. Too easily. Like I'd practiced them my whole life. The nurse paused just a fraction of a second.
She didn't challenge me.
She didn't say anything awkward or pitying. She just adjusted my fore, her expression softening in a way that made my chest tighten. She offered me water. She told me to take slow breaths. Then she left. And just like that, I was alone again. I lay there listening to the unit. Shoes squeaking down the hallway. A cart rattling. A cough from behind another curtain. Familiar sounds. Sounds I knew by heart. I had worked in hospitals for years. I had stood beside beds like mine. I had squeezed hands and promised people they weren't alone. I had believed it when I said it. Now, staring at the empty chair, I realized how different it felt to be on this side. After a few minutes, I reached for my phone. My hand shook as I picked it up. I told myself I was just checking the time. Just making sure no one had tried to reach me. I already knew what I was going to see. The family group chat was active. Messages stacked one after another. Serena had sent photos from her dress fitting. She stood on a small platform, white fabric hugging her perfectly, smiling wide like this was the happiest day of her life. She wrote about how magical everything felt, how everything was finally coming together. My mom replied with heart emojis, told her to focus on her big day. My dad reacted with a thumbs up. I kept scrolling. More updates. Timelines. Appointments. Cake flavors. Then, hours later, a short message appeared. "How are you doing?" Followed by a laughing emoji. I stared at the screen. Something cold spreading through my chest. Not shock this time.
Clarity.
This wasn't chaos. This wasn't confusion. This was priority. I closed the chat and opened social media, even though I knew it would hurt. Serena's story loaded slowly, then filled my screen. She stood in a bright bakery, laughing, holding a tiny fork with a bite of cake on it. The timestamp sat quietly at the bottom. I checked the time. That was when I had been wheeled into surgery. That was when the anesthesiologist had told me to count backward. That was when my family had already chosen to be somewhere else. Something shifted inside me then. Not anger, not tears, just a calm, heavy understanding settling into place. This was not an accident. No one forgot me. No one misunderstood how serious it was. They knew, and they chose. I locked my phone and set it face down on the tray. My hands stopped shaking. For a long time, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about how often I had explained things away for them. How many times I told myself they did the best they could. How often I wore being strong like armor. Being strong meant being quiet. It meant not asking for help. It meant understanding when other people came first. I had learned that lesson early. If you've ever been the one everyone assumes will handle it, tell me in the comments. Even just one word. I see you. A different nurse came in to check my vitals. She asked if I was in pain and adjusted my medication. Then she asked again if there was anyone she could call for me. I shook my head. It was easier than explaining. When she left, the room felt even quieter. I wondered what it looked like from the outside. A woman in her early 30s, alone in a recovery bed. No flowers. No jacket draped over the chair. Phone face down. I wondered if anyone passing by noticed. Or if they assumed I didn't have anyone. The truth was worse. I had people. They just decided I wasn't important enough to stay. As the afternoon wore on, my phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up. I already knew what it would be. More wedding updates. More reassurance that everything was fine. I focused instead on the physical sensations. The ache in my side. The weight of the blanket. The steady beep of the monitor. It kept me grounded. I reminded myself I was safe. The procedure was over. I would heal. What I couldn't yet say out loud was that something else had been injured in that room. Something that wouldn't be fixed with antibiotics or rest. That night, when the lights dimmed and the unit grew quieter, I realized this feeling wasn't new. It was just louder now. Because lying there alone, memories started surfacing, moments I'd brushed off for years, and I began to see a pattern I could never unsee again. The room settled into that late-night hospital stillness, where time stretches thin. The lights were dimmed. The hallway sound softened. Somewhere down the unit, a call bell chimed, and then went quiet again. I stared at the ceiling and let my thoughts drift, not forward, but backward. Not in order. In flashes. My high school graduation came first. The heat of early June. The cap pressing against my forehead. I remember scanning the crowd, searching for familiar faces. Parents stood early, holding flowers and posters with names written in glitter. My family arrived just as my row stood to walk. My mom smiled like everything was fine. My dad patted my shoulder. Serena said traffic was awful and she'd had an appointment. I told them it was okay. I told myself it was okay. Then nursing school graduation. Another ceremony. Another sea of caps and gowns. Another late arrival. Serena had spilled something on her dress and needed help finding a replacement. Dad said he didn't want to come without them. I walked the stage alone. Afterward, my mom hugged me and said she knew I didn't mind because I was strong. That word again.
Strong.
I shifted carefully in the hospital bed, the soreness in my side pulling me back to the present. My fore tugged slightly against my arm. I reached for my phone and opened the family chat, not looking for new messages this time. I was looking for proof. It didn't take long. You'll be fine. She can handle it. She's strong. It was everywhere. When I was sick and asked for someone to pick up groceries, Mom said I rested better alone. When I injured my wrist lifting a patient, Serena said she had plans. Dad sent a thumbs up. When Serena went through a breakup, the family rearranged everything. My parents drove to her apartment that night. Mom cooked meals. Dad fixed things around her place. I drove over after a 12-hour shift and held her while she cried. She whispered that she didn't know how to be alone. No one ever asked if I did. The realization didn't crash into me. It seeped in slowly, like cold. None of these moments had seemed dramatic on their own. They were small, easy to excuse. I told myself everyone was busy. I told myself Serena needed more support. But lying there, fresh out of emergency surgery alone, the excuses felt thin. I open my photos. Holiday pictures. Birthdays. Vacations. Serena centered. My parents close to her. Me slightly off to the side. Not because anyone forced me there, but because I had learned where I belonged. On the edge. Out of the way. Understanding. My chest tightened. Not with anger. With grief. I had spent years believing being dependable was something to be proud of. That needing less made me easier to love. But strength without support isn't strength. It's survival dressed up as virtue. A nurse came in quietly to check my vitals. She asked if I was nauseated, reminded me to sip water, asked once more if there was anyone she should call. Her kindness nearly broke me. I shook my head and smiled out of habit. She nodded, understanding without pushing, and left. As soon as the curtain fell back into place, the smile disappeared. I reopened the chat and studied the wording, the tone, the rhythm. Every time I was overlooked, it was because they thought I could handle it. Every time Serena needed something, they rushed because they believed she couldn't. I was reliable, so I was deprioritized. She was fragile, so she was cherished. The realization didn't burn. It froze. I opened my notes app and started typing.
Dates.
Events. What was said. What wasn't. No emotion. Just facts. A timeline of a story I had been telling myself wrong for years. One line stopped me cold. They said I would understand. They always said I would understand. I closed my eyes. If this is hitting close to home, take a breath with me. You don't have to explain yourself here. Just know you're seen. I added one last sentence to the note. Don't let them rewrite this later. Because I knew how it would go. Serena would say she didn't realize how serious it was. My mom would say she thought I preferred being alone. My dad would say he didn't want to make things worse. And I would be tempted out of habit to accept their version. Not this time. I saved the note. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a plan. It was truth, captured before I could minimize it. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling again. The pain was still there, but it felt cleaner now. Less tangled. Something inside me had shifted. I didn't know what I was going to do with that clarity yet. I only knew one thing. I would never forget the sound of my sister's voice, saying I would be fine while walking away from my hospital bed. And I was done pretending it didn't hurt. But the real test came after I left the hospital, when my sister decided my space, my recovery, and my boundaries were still hers to ignore. They discharged me the next morning. The doctor spoke gently, reminding me to rest, to drink water, to come back immediately if the pain returned. I nodded, thanked him, did everything I was supposed to do. Leaving the hospital felt strange, like stepping out of a room where something had cracked open and realizing the rest of the world had no idea. A rideshare dropped me at my apartment in Columbus. The winter air was sharp enough to sting my lungs. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and paused. The place felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because I had. For 2 days, I moved slowly, slept, drank water, ignored every family message that came in. Serena sent photos of floral arrangements. My mom asked if I felt better, then immediately followed it with wedding updates. My dad sent a short "get well soon." By the 3rd day, cabin fever crept in. I decided to stop by the ER. Not to work, just to move. To feel useful again. That's where Jonas saw me. He raised an eyebrow and said I was supposed to be resting. I told him I just needed air. He asked how the pain was. Manageable, I said. Then he told me about a patient in room 8. An older man, dehydrated and confused. His daughter brought him in and left 5 minutes later because she had brunch plans. I closed my eyes for a second. Some things repeat until you see them. Before I left, Jonas said quietly, "You deserved better." It hit harder than I expected. I nodded, changed the subject, and went home. That evening, my phone buzzed again. Serena.
Hey.
Super quick question. Can I store some wedding stuff in your spare room? Just temporary. You travel so much, you won't even notice. I stared at the message. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't ask how recovery was going. She wanted space. My space. Because it was convenient. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. What things? Her response came instantly. Decorations. Favors. A couple dresses. Andrew's place is full, and Mom and Dad have guests. Also, I think you still have a spare key somewhere. Something in me went very still. Don't come by until I say, I replied. A thumbs-up emoji appeared. The next afternoon, I walked into my apartment and froze. Boxes stacked in the hallway. Plastic tubs in the spare room. A rolling rack of dresses leaned against the wall. Ribbons. Centerpieces. Garment bags with names written in marker. Serena stood in the middle of it all, holding a clipboard, talking to herself.
She jumped when she saw me. Oh.
You're early. Do you love it? I swear it's only for a few days. My voice came out flat. Did you let yourself in? She blinked. You left a key at Mom and Dad's for emergencies. And you were in the hospital, so I figured. You put your wedding storage in my home without asking. She waved her hand. Don't overthink this. You're always so independent. You don't need the space. I knew you'd understand. There it was again. I stepped fully into the room. You need to move your things out. Her smile dropped.
What? Why?
I thought you'd be supportive. I'm stressed. I just had emergency surgery. I said calmly. You have 1 week. And I want my key back. Her mouth fell open. You're being dramatic. Once, that word would have folded me in half. I would have apologized. Smoothed things over. Laughed it off. Not this time. 1 week. I repeated. She grabbed her purse, muttered that we'd talk when I was thinking clearly, and slammed the door behind her. I stood there shaking. Not from fear. From relief. The clutter in the spare room felt symbolic. Every time my needs came last, stacked neatly out of the way. That night, the apartment was quiet again. Boxes untouched. Pain still lingering. But something new was there too. A line. And for the first time in my life, I had drawn it. If you've ever set a boundary and been called dramatic for it, yeah, you're not alone. I didn't know yet how my family would react. But I knew one thing. I wasn't apologizing for wanting my space back. And what I did next, the decision I made alone in my apartment, would change everything in a way none of us could take back. The apartment felt too quiet after Serena left. Not peaceful quiet. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you notice every breath. I sank onto the couch carefully, mindful of the ache still living in my side. The doctor had warned me the pain would linger. He didn't mention how strange it would feel to sit in your own home and realize you'd been shrinking yourself inside it for years. The boxes stayed in the spare room like a physical echo of everything I'd tolerated. Every assumption. Every time my space had been treated as available. Every moment my needs had been postponed. Over the next few days, I rested. I ignored wedding updates. The family chat went oddly quiet, like everyone was waiting for me to fold first. I didn't. On the 4th morning, I woke before sunrise. The sky outside was pale blue, the kind that feels fragile and honest. I made tea, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat by the window. Something steady formed in my chest. The same feeling I get before making a hard call at work. When I know what needs to be done even if I don't know how it will land. I opened my laptop. I didn't rant. I didn't dramatize. I wrote dates.
Times.
Words I'd heard with my own ears. I wrote that I'd been taken into emergency care. That the situation wasn't routine. That my family left before consent forms were signed. I attached a photo of my hospital wristband. I attached a screenshot of Serena's cake tasting story. No names. No insults. Just facts. I ended it with one line. This was the day my family chose their priorities. And now I'm choosing mine. My hands were cold when I hit schedule. 9:30 in the morning. The day of the wedding. I powered off my phone and sat there in the quiet, waiting for the weight to crash down. It didn't. Instead, something lifted. I wasn't doing this to punish anyone. I wasn't doing it to ruin anything. I was doing it because the truth mattered, and I was done being the one who swallowed it to keep everyone else comfortable. By the time the post went live, I was already on a plane, phone tucked deep in my bag.
I didn't watch the fallout.
I didn't need to. Somewhere between Ohio and the clouds, I realized something that made me laugh softly to myself. The sound surprising and shaky and real. I hadn't abandoned anyone. I had simply stopped abandoning myself. Later, much later, I would learn what happened at the wedding. The silence. The whispers. The way Serena said the same words out loud that she'd said behind a hospital curtain. She's strong. She'll be fine. And how, this time, people actually heard it. But I wasn't there for any of it. I landed in Seattle, stepped into cool, damp air, and felt something settle inside me. Not joy. Not victory.
Peace.
That night, in a quiet airport terminal, I opened my phone and changed my emergency contact. I removed my parents' names. I added Paige instead. A small confirmation appeared on the screen. Contact updated. I exhaled. A real one. The kind that feels like coming up for air after holding your breath too long. Months passed. Life stretched.
Softened.
I worked. I traveled. I met people who didn't confuse strength with silence. I learned what it felt like to be seen without having to earn it. My family reached out eventually. Apologies came slowly.
Some awkward.
Some real. Some late. I didn't rush forgiveness. Because healing doesn't move on someone else's timeline. One evening, sitting by my window with rain tapping softly against the glass, I realized something else. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. And right here, pause with me for just a second. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Because if you've ever been called strong when what you really needed was support, if you've ever been told you'd understand while being left behind, if you've ever laughed it off while something inside you quietly broke, I see you. And yeah, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop pretending you're fine. The truth isn't revenge. It's release. And choosing yourself? That's not cruelty. That's survival.